Okay, welcome back everyone to another episode of Breck to the Future. This is our 10th episode, and you may notice that I'm wearing a white hat that was not intentional. I did some cleaning over the weekend and somehow put away all my black hats, and I have no idea where I put them. But needed to get this episode going, so here we are. Today is going to be a civic signal where we want to talk about U.S. manufacturing. Manufacturing has been at the forefront of a lot of the conversations that have been had with this new administration, and we certainly have some takes here. We also are going to talk about some of the provisions in the Big Beautiful Bill that can help it out. Excited to discuss this. Let's take it away here. I want you to picture a two-lane highway that's cutting down a prairie at dawn. On one side stands this enormous brick factory. You know, the windows are dark, the parking lot is empty, vines are starting to creep across the faded Made in the United States sign. Uh, every local over 50 years old can't recall the shift whistle that once set the town's rhythm. You got parents in coveralls headed to work. There used to be Little League uniforms paid for by the company picnic fund. Teenagers earning enough on the summer on the lines to pay their college tuition. Those memories are a part of the silence today. The machines, they weren't shut off because the product stopped mattering. They were shipped overseas in search of marginally cheaper labor, faster permits, and a shorter quarterly reporting. Multiply that single factory by thousands, and you have the slow motion that has hollowed out and defined American manufacturing for the last 40 years. But the decline, it's not our destiny, right? An industrial renaissance seems to be forming beneath these headlines that we see recently. It's propelled by entrepreneurs that are seeing an opportunity where an older playbook only saw costs. And by a new policy climate that will finally reward rather than penalize building things made on American soil. Our task in this episode, what I wanted to convey and discuss here, is to understand those systemic failures that really dimmed the factory lights of old. And we want to certainly spotlight the builders that are grinding away to switch everything back on. So let's talk about how we got here and what happened. American manufacturing once functioned like a circulatory system here in the United States. Post World War II, we produced nearly everything that the modern world required. We had cars rolling out of Michigan, we had steel pouring out of Pennsylvania, appliances in Ohio, and electronics in California and Texas. At its 1997 employment peak, almost 20 million Americans, that was roughly one in four private sector workers, were earning a living in manufacturing and within a plant. The wages financed their mortgages, the college funds, and the civic life, while the proximity between the design engineers and the machine operators sped this innovation. When an assembly line worker shaved off a second for a weld or suggested a sturdier hinge, that improvement would jumpstart right into the next week's production run. It was incredible. But beginning in the early 1980s, cracks spread throughout the system. Globalization promised open markets and lower sticker prices, but it also dangled a seductive spreadsheet, right? More assembly to a low-wage country, keep design in the United States, and capture that margin. Well, with trade barriers falling and container shipping costs plummeting, companies rushed to arbitrage labor. Automation simultaneously boosted this productivity, but it allowed remaining plants to make more with fewer people. But those benefits didn't always trickle back to reskilling the displaced workers. Another pressure point was regulatory creation. In theory, environmental review and zoning and workplace safety protected communities. But in practice, overlapping jurisdictions and sequential permit queues turn greenfield construction into a marathon. A modern semiconductor fab in the United States might need more than 200 distinct approvals: water rights, air emission, waste handling, traffic studies. Often these are handled one after another rather than in parallel. The same facility in Taiwan, Singapore, or even Germany could break ground in half the time because agencies coordinated and simply moved faster. Investors would chase technological windows, realize that they can't afford 3 years of paperwork, purgatory, so capital is going to flow wherever geography says yes first. Currency and trade dynamics compounded this exodus as well, right? The dollar's status as a global reserve continued and continues to get stronger than it would otherwise, which makes American exports pricier abroad. But meanwhile, foreign competitors sometimes layered subsidies, cheap land, tax holidays, soft loans on top of the low wages. So domestic producers suddenly had to beat not actual cost, but cost minus subsidy while navigating a longer permitting timeline. The results were brutal in many of the regions. Manufacturing share of the United States global domestic product drifted downward from about 16% in 1980 to roughly 10% today. Employment fell faster, bottoming out at 11.5 million in 2010. Places like Youngstown, Ohio, or Flint, Michigan lost not only payrolls, but purpose. A shuttered plant drains property tax value, storefronts follow, families move, high school employment rather drops, and confidence that we build what the world needs erode. And then don't get us started with COVID-19. COVID-19 turned the slow burn problem into a national headline. When Asian chip fabs locked down, US auto plants ran out of microcontrollers and halted the production lines, basically wiping out an estimated 11 million vehicles from global output in a single year. Mechanics could not get sensors, hospitals can't restock products and protective masks, and grocery shelves felt the whiplash. Efficiency, we discovered, had morphed into brittleness. Now, where are the signals of solutions? Like with any of these episodes, we want to talk about the builders and the enablers. The same forces that once encouraged flight are now tilting homeward. Unlike previous top-down industrial policies, today's framework is going to rely on clearing barriers rather than dictating production quotas. It's going to allow market signals to do some of the heavy lifting. Congress has quietly pushed the biggest lever this spring by passing the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OBBBA for short. The law restored full immediate expensing for both equipment and entire factory buildings and locked in that benefit through 2023. Sorry, 2032 rather, as it's 2025. A $1 billion battery line that used to amortize over decades can now be written off in a year, which will release hundreds of millions in cash flow for additional hiring and research. This act also elevated the semiconductor investment tax credit from 2025 to 35%. When aired with the CHIPS Act and the Science Act direct grants, it effectively chops off the cutting edge fab by a third without instructing engineers which chips to make. States have also responded with a land rush of preparedness. 10 years ago, Tennessee quietly began buying farmland, running industrial grade power lines, laying rail spurs, and refilling environmental studies for a 4,100-acre northeastern of Memphis opportunity. When Ford went hunting for homes for its new all-electric truck campus, that shovel-ready pad, now branded a Memphis Regional Megasite, beat 70 competitors around the globe. North Carolina mirrored that strategy near Greensboro, landing Toyota's next generation battery center. By finishing the dull groundwork up front, these states hacked essentially a year to a year and a half of work and construction schedules that allowed them to capture these opportunities. Not only that, but behind new walls, the choreography between people and machines is changing. At the SK battery in Georgia, the night shift runs lights out. Some of these dark factories that we've talked about. Autonomous guided vehicles are feeding electrons into slurry into production coders while quality sensors flag anomalies in real time. Human technicians are arriving at dawn, many fresh from the Toyota Fame apprenticeship program to analyze dashboard data and to make enhancements where see fit. We are starting to see that automation combined with the human role in some of these factories. A similar story is unfolding in steel. Nucor's latest electric arc mini mills in Kentucky and West Virginia are relying on artificial intelligence to melt chemistries to develop new steel products at record efficiencies. Entrepreneurial ambition is perhaps the clearest proof of momentum. Tesla's gigafactory, which have been around for years, their strategy is integrating that battery cellular technology production, as well as powering electronic stamping and vehicle assembly all under one roof. Nevada and Texas has jump-started this and continued to grow. In Ohio, Intel's Silicon Heartland is pouring concrete, which could be what was the next billion-dollar cluster of fabs over the next decade. Relativity Space in Southern California is 3D printing engine rockets from recycled metal powder. I mean, everyone is looking for somewhere and something to do. But driving much of this experimentation is a rediscovered industrial commons within the United States. The Manufacturing United States network of private industry institutes, which launched a decade ago, now counts more than a dozen hubs. America Makes in Youngstown shares open source print parameters, so rural shop jobs in Kansas can quote aerospace bracket. ARM in Pittsburgh is doing similar things. NextFlex in San Jose is teaching circuit manufacturing without having to outsource and offshore into Asia. Knowledge that once lived only inside the Fortune 100 giants is now spilling into a wider economy. But while this is very exciting and we are absolutely encouraged by these steps that are being taken, there is still friction. There are still issues that have to be uncovered. Culture and politics rarely pivot as fast as capital, right? Wall Street's habit of rewarding that quarterly earnings review can still starve a long horizon plant upgrade. Some communities reflexively oppose large facilities. They fear traffic, they fear change, even when environmental footprints are shrinking. Permitting reform also remains patchy. One-stop shops in North Carolina now greenlight megasites in under a year, but the same proposal in another state could bounce between agencies for 30 months. Regional divergence also poses another challenge. Sunbelt states have captured roughly half of all new factory jobs since before 2020, but many legacy Rust Belt counties are chasing their first major win. Better commuter links, busways now, perhaps a higher speed rail in time could let a battery plant in rural Georgia tap labor pools in Atlanta without forcing laborers to relocate. Automation anxiety also lingers too, right? Studies are showing that roles usually shift upwards in maintenance, analytics, and continuous improvements rather than disappear, but only if these apprenticeships and stackable credentials are scaling as quickly as the robots do. We will see automation, we will see manufacturing grow, but we need to find that happy balance between the automation as well as the human element. That is critical to this. But now we want to talk about how we're going to reframe this and the call to action. Manufacturing is not nostalgia for the smokestacks of old. It's our society's muscle memory. It's our collective ability to turn ideas into atoms. A robust homegrown base delivers a resilient prosperity. It shortens supply chains and it reins in trade deficits. Domestic clean tech factories also cut emissions and strategic risk simultaneously. Most of all, a revived maker culture, it resonates a civic pride, right? When neighbors know that they built the technologies that's powering our tomorrow, uh, the grid, the medical devices, they are going to rediscover and reunify under that purpose. So what can you do? What can we all do? Well, if you manage procurement, run a simple test. Price a critical component, including freight delays, defect risk, inventory float, and then request a quote from a short stop 2 zip codes away. Many managers are stunned to find that local total cost of getting that component beats the import once you risk and count it honestly, right? If you teach, invite robotics technicians or CNC apprenticeships to your next class. Firsthand shop knowledge is going to beat something foreign every day of the week. And every month shaved off of a factory timeline, it is going to compound to prosperity for decades. I mean, imagine holding a smartphone whose silicon brain was etched in Ohio, its battery was stamped in Georgia, and its casting was printed in Texas. Now, picture that phone delivered overnight because the entire supply chain sits within a 2-day truck radius. I want you to visualize that night shift actually humming autonomously while day shift parents can make that school play, the T-ball game, everything that we once knew and we were confident in. We have all that level of confidence in both job and community to still be there in 20 years. The future, it's not inevitable, but it's built bolt by bolt, brick by brick. The people that decide that are still mattering 100% in this country. So we are very encouraged by US manufacturing opportunities. It is going to take a major societal shift, but it's one that we know that we are up to. This has been Breck to the Future with another Civic Signal, this time tackling US manufacturing. Appreciate you stopping by. Keep building.